Hi, everyone, and welcome to Software Success. I'm Ashley Jones, and I will be talking to you about software today, as always. So, if you're new here to Software Success, hello and welcome. This is a place where we talk about all things dime embroidery software. So, we go through different modules, we do different types of editing, we create fun designs, and you can ask any question that you have about your dime embroidery software. So say hi if you haven't already. I love to see where everybody's watching from. And then it also gives us a little bit of time for everybody to jump on before we get started. I see tons of people popping in and saying hi and letting us know where they're watching from. And also, while you're commenting, if you are new here, tell us what software you are using. So each time that we are on Software Success, we are talking about different features in the different programs. And I try to make sure to let you know where those features come from so that you know if you have them, but you can also try them. And I'll show you that as well if you're new here. So Carolyn Morrow, thanks for being here. She said she's looking forward to this. I wish you would post the link earlier in the day. And so usually it happens the day before, but I'll definitely make that recommendation, Carolyn. Thank you for that. And Laura, always good to see you from Lincoln, Nebraska. And since she said she's looking forward to this program. So Eileen Reichert, thanks for being here from Maryland, and Linda Johnson. And Linda's right around the area that our home office in Dallas is. And so she says she's got thunderstorms. So thanks for being here. If it's thunderstorming, that's always a good day to be indoors doing something with your sewing and embroidery, right? So Deborah, thanks for being here from Arizona. Dawn, hey Dawn from Creative Appliques, always good to see you as well. And hi, Linda. Glad you're here. And So Diva 5691, thanks for being here from California. So good to see you as well. Cora, thanks for being here. Tennessee. Caroline Booth, always enjoy having you here and seeing your beautiful creations. And Tammy Madden, you guys know Tammy. She's part of our education team. I bet you guys have seen her a time or two on chat. Sarah, thanks for being here from the Villages in Florida. So good to see you as well. So lots of familiar names and then some new names as well. Thanks for being here, Dixie. Always good to see you too. And I know that a lot of you guys have been here before because I do recognize a lot of the names. But again, if you are new to Software Success, we talk about embroidery software here and how you can create and edit your designs. I do not call myself a digitizer, but I do know how to use my software really well to make me look like a star. So, and my goal is to help you learn your software that well as well, so that you can get the most out of it and learn to do anything you want to with your programs. So, all right. So I think we have a good group here. So let's get started with our topic. And so today we're going to be talking about some dimensional embroidery and specifically foam and fringe designs. And this topic was in coordination with Eileen from Thursday. So I'm going to show you how we have a program called Special FX that will help you create your fringe and foam easily just with the click of a button. But if you don't have that program and you want to learn a little bit more and maybe you want to create from scratch, you certainly can. And I'm going to give you some tips on that also using different features and different programs that we have, and we'll go over that. So, but if you are new to Fringe particularly, we have a free design that was released last week, and you'll get another free Fringe design this week. But if you go to dzgns.com and click on the designs and projects, there's an option for free designs in the drop down menu. And last week, Eileen released a free design that you can go and download, which was this adorable little poodle here. And it has fringe for the little pom-poms on the tail and the feet, and then the mane as well. So download that if you've never done fringe. That's a great way to play with what we're going to be talking about today as far as the stitch out out process. And then this Thursday, join Eileen May 8th at 1 p.m. Central, and she's going to talk about stitching fringe and then different ways to cut the fringe to get a different look. And then also just different styles of fringe as well. We're going to talk a little bit about here today, but we always talk about the software side of things in Software Success. And then you can join Eileen on Thursday this week for that stitch out process and what it looks like, and then how you're going to cut it, trim it, all those things that are the stitching process. And next week, or this week, sorry, when she does have her Between Friends episode, she'll release the next On the House design. So I don't want to give it away. So you can join her, and it's another fringe design that you can use to play around with your technique of trimming and cutting for what she's going to be talking about. So join her, and then you can get those free designs, dzgns.com, go to the designs and projects, and it's a free On the House design from the drop down list. And we give one each week. We release a new one, so you can actually download all of them for the entire year. Okay, so a little bit about fringe before we get started. And I've actually talked about this before, but again, Eileen and I have been trying to coordinate our episodes so that you guys kind of see the full picture. So this is the start, basically, of what you'll see on Thursday. So to create a fringe design, so a fringe design is really a satin stitch design. A lot of times it's got a long satin stitches, but when you cut the bobbin, it will fray or fringe like you see here in the far right. So the design looks like this on the screen. It just is long satin stitches, and then we cut the bobbin to make it fringe. Now, if you do that on a regular satin stitch design, your stitches will fall out of your project. So with fringe designs, there's generally what we refer to as an anchoring stitch. So when you trim your bobbin stitches, there's something else that's going to hold those fringe stitches in place when you pull the stitches toward the top. Okay. So when you're stitching a fringe design, it may look like in a design, it may just look like a regular satin stitch design, but hopefully you've got instructions that tell you it's meant to be fringe, or either you're creating it yourself and you know where you meant to put the fringe on your design. Okay. So in this one here, this little kind of fan fringe design, there's a satin stitch at the bottom, and that's the anchoring stitch that holds all those stitches still to your project after you trim it. Now, there's other types of fringe, and Eileen's going to go into these more detail, but we're going to see them in the software, so I just wanted to point them out. But this particular case here, this is a wide satin stitch, and the anchoring stitch runs down the center. And so when you fringe it, you get the fringe on either side of that anchoring stitch there. So it's just a different look, but it still works the same way. You're cutting the bobbin, and it's going to fringe on either side of that anchoring stitch. Now, in this example, the anchoring stitch is on the inside of the satin stitch. So when you trim the bobbin thread, then you get the fringe that's all to the opposite side of that anchoring stitch. And then another example here, the anchoring stitch is in the center of that circle fringe, and so that anchors it in the center, and you get the fringe all the way around. We also might see something like this where you have several pieces of fringe. This for this instance is like a half circle of fringe that I have just layered on top of each other to give me a bigger, like more pom-pom look. And the top one actually is using variegated thread, and then the bottom is just solid thread. So I just put the picture of the solid one because it's really, I think, confusing to look at with just the variegated, but I love using variegated thread in my fringe examples. So those are just some examples of what you can do with fringe, and I wanted to just explain that part about the anchoring stitch. So now let's head over to our embroidery software and see how we can create some of these fringe examples. Now, you guys know that I would say over the past year, I've been showing our modules that have like those one-click options. And then if we want to create something from scratch, then, or digitize something completely yourself, then that might be a feature of another program like Perfect Embroidery Pro or something else. So we've been doing a combination of the software that has the one-click wonder cylinder option, I like to call them, and the manual way of doing some things. So, and I'll do the same thing today with fringe and foam. So over here, so for those of you that are brand new to Dime software, let me just give you, because we've actually had, I think, an influx of newbies because of the In the Hoop software program, which I'm going to be working on in June for all of you. So I just want to kind of start over a little bit. This will be a refresher for some of you guys that have been here, but maybe new if you're new to software success. So all of Dime software is housed inside of a program called Embroidery Toolshed. Okay. Embroidery Toolshed is free to download and install. And it has a few features of its own, very few features to do some basic resizing, change colors in the free program. And then every single time you purchase a module, over here in the lower right where my cursor is blinking, there is a list of every module that Dime has that you can purchase separately. And every time you purchase one and you activate it with inside of your embroidery tool shed, then it puts a check mark here and it turns on those features in your software. So over here to the right, you can see that Stitch Snapshot is not checked. So if I were to purchase that, I would come inside of the embroidery tool shed and I would click this dot, dot, dot options, that ellipsis button. And then you can see I've got the option to activate. So when I click activate, it's going to give me a location to enter a serial number, and that's going to turn on the features or the icons, the tools inside of Stitch Snapshot, but inside of my embroidery tool shed. So every time we turn on one, it adds the features. So then your embroidery tool shed is just growing more powerful each time. Okay. So I also want to point out too, for those of you that are new to our embroidery software whole selection, our suite, you can also try any of the programs you don't own. So if it does not have a check mark next to it, you can click that options, the ellipsis button there, and click try, and it will put that into a trial mode. You'll see a little timer there, and that means that you're trying that out. In order to get all of your software to come back, you have to close it out and open it back up to end the trial on that program. Okay, so you can try any of them, you just can't save. Now, the other thing I want to point out over here is every one of these has a manual option and a tutorials option under it. If you click the manual next to any of the programs, it'll take you to the user manual for that specific module. And if you click the tutorials, it'll take you to our YouTube channel and tutorials on that specific module. So today we're going to be seeing features from Special FX. And then I'm also going to do some of these manually that uses features from our Perfect Embroidery Pro and our My Quilt Embellisher and a couple other programs. But if you don't own them and you want to play around with what I'm doing today, then you would go here and then you would have a try option and you can click try. And you can also click to view tutorials about Special FX and also the manual as well. So, okay, so that's just a little tutorial, for those of you that are brand new. So let's get started. So I'm going to start with the easiest way to create fringe and foam designs, and that is the Special FX embroidery software. And I actually have it set as default. Okay, so we're going to be using some of the built-in tools. So I figured just setting it as default would make it much easier. Okay, so first I want to talk about these icons that are grayed out. So if you are new, anytime an icon is grayed out, that means that you do not have something on your workspace that will apply to that icon. So right now, the fringe shape is grayed out, but the fringe tool is active. And also we're going to be talking about 3D foam, and you can see that's grayed out as well. So let's first talk about fringe tool. So the fringe tool is a collection of fringe elements that you can apply to a different design. So when you open that fringe tool, you can select one of those designs, any one of them, and click OK. And then when you click on your workspace, it will add that fringe design right there. So you can see here, I can put these little fringe pom-poms together, and I'm just basically creating a bigger version. Now, I've got them overlapping here, and that's perfectly fine with Fringe, because when I release the stitches, it'll give me a little bit fuller look. I just don't want them to overlap so much that it runs into my anchoring stitch right there, because then that would tack down this edge of my fringe. So the fringe tool is allows you to select any of these fringe elements, and then you just click on your workspace and it adds it right where you click. Okay. And then once you have added them, you certainly can move them around to be whatever you want. And you could even rotate them. So this might be a cool, cute little, and in fact, let me do, I'll show you another tool instead of doing this. So I was just going to copy and paste them, but with this one element on the screen, if I use my reflect tool, then you can see that I can flip these around, and I could even roll them around. And by putting these four fringe, they kind of look like hearts, right? Together, then I've got this bigger fringe element here that might be kind of cute to stitch out. Now, just like we said before, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. You can see the anchoring stitches in the center here, and these are long satin stitches that once this stitches, will trim the bobbin over here, and then these two pieces of each of these little elements would be the fringe. Okay. So now the fringe tool, it's that easy to use. So I'm going to open a new workspace, and then let's grab a design and use the fringe tool with it. So I'm going to go to the flora category inside of this program here. And I'm just going to choose this little floral design, and it's got this little berry on the end of it. If you ungroup your design and go over to your sequence view, so I just clicked ungroup and my sequence view, and that allows me to select the different elements here. If I select just the berries and then press the delete key, that's going to remove those satin stitches, and I can then put a little fringe element there if I want. Okay, so this is the run stitch that's underneath, so I'm going to also remove that as well. And that you see remaining is an artwork. And I know that because if I click the plus sign, it has artwork on the workspace here. So now if we go to our fringe tool, and for this one, maybe we want to choose this little flower here. And then I can just click right here at the end of my stem to add that flower. Okay. Now that's pretty easy, right? And I do love the fringe tool because I really like adding just small elements of fringe to my design. I don't always like every place to be fringe. Like you could have fringe leaves here if you wanted, but to me, I just like a little touch of some of these specialty techniques. Okay. So if I do my undo key and remove that flower, if I go back to my fringe shape tool, it may also be cute to maybe do this little fan element here. And I can click this spot here, and then I can even rotate it. Let's get our select tool so that we can rotate this around. But this may look like a bud of a flower rather than our fringe flower that we see here. So okay, so there's the fringe tool that allows you to add those little elements to your design. Now, we're talking right now, I'm using the Special FX embroidery software. That is a program that has one-click specialty features to apply to your designs. Like you can one-click have plaid, one-click have mylar, emboss, and a multicolored, like we call prism or ombre design. So that's the program that we're using now, but I'm going to show you how to create some of these fringe elements manually if you want to do that as well. Okay. Now, another thing while I'm here, we're going to be talking about foam. Okay. A foam design. Let me grab one of these letters. So we have built-in 3D foam fonts in Special FX and also in Word Art and Stitches. Okay, so, and I'm going to change that type of text here. Let's go to the Arial one. And let's take a look at this design here. So I'm going to turn off of my 3D, and then I'm going to really zoom in close so we can talk about that. Okay. So now fringe, or not fringe, I'm sorry, foam, a 3D foam design is usually where we place a foam product underneath our satin stitches, and it stitches over top and it kind of puffs up the design. And so this technique is really easy. A lot of times you can put a foam under a satin stitch if it doesn't have an underlay, or you turn the underlay off. But you do need some way to enclose the shape. Okay, so let me choose this. I'm going to just select this. I'm copy it and paste it so we can make a comparison here. And then I'm going to change to a Arial font that's not a foam font for this second letter. And then let's zoom into these two. So let me select, I'm going to put this, I'm going to make it bigger just so it's the same size. Clicked and dragged to make it larger. And then I'm going to zoom in here to these two letters so we can kind of really see what's going on. Okay. So now when we have satin stitch letters, you can see here, because I'm not on the 3D view. If I turn on 3D view, you can see the stitches. So we're talking about satin stitches that go side to side here. And that is also referred to as a column stitch because it creates a column, right, with our stitches. Now, your regular embroidery text has underlay. You can see that zigzag running underneath. And this satin stitch or this column stitch right here at the very bottom of each of these, it's open. If you've stitched satin stitches, you know that this goes from side to side. And then this is an opening pretty much all the way under those satin stitches because they don't tack down. Okay. So if you put foam underneath there, you would see the foam sticking out of the ends. So with 3D foam, we need either this cap that you see, or we need some sort of design that tapers off to enclose the foam. Okay, so now look at my foam design here. You can see this extra thread here because that is the cap that's going to hold or enclose the foam into this column stitch right here on this left hand side, and then also, you know, over here on this side. Now our part that runs across the center, it's going to get encapsulated because it's going to get stitched over with these satin columns that go down each side. Okay, so we don't necessarily have to have a cap there, but those caps stitch before the satin stitch to enclose the foam. So if we watch our slow redraw, so all of our Dime software has this stitch simulator where you can watch this stitch out on the screen. So I'm just going to advance ahead because that first part is our flower that we're not seeing. But with this particular foam design, I get this satin stitch that's kind of a placement stitch around the edge. And then now the next thing that stitches, see those little caps? And that's going to enclose the foam, and then I get my satin stitches that go over that. Whereas with our regular satin font, we don't get those caps for our letters. Okay, so now let's zoom back out now that we know that, and let's look at this particular design here. So I'm going to get rid of these two letters. And then let's just look at this design here. Now, satin stitches are what you want to put foam underneath. If we were to put foam underneath a fill stitch design, it would just flatten it out. So these leaves are ideal for foam because they are tapered, so it's going to be completely enclosed, but also they're a satin stitch. Okay, so now if I select each of these, I'm holding down my control key to select all of them. And now you can see that this 3D foam icon is illuminated. That means that it's active because I can actually apply it to the stitches that I have selected. So now to turn these leaves into 3D foam stitches, I just need to select them and click one time on that foam icon, and it's going to change to the appropriate density, and it's also going to add those end caps if we need them. Okay, so now with just a couple of clicks, we've added fringe and foam to the designs. Okay, so now that we've seen the fringe tool, let me show you the fringe shape. Okay, so fringe shape is this tool here that's actually grayed out, and we apply that to a shape itself. Okay, so if I go to the frames, these are our shapes, and I can go to like the shapes here and just choose a heart. Now that I have this artwork on the screen, the fringe shape is illuminated, and I can click that and I get options. It asks me, do I want a steel type fringe, which is running around the edge with the anchor stitch in the center, Or do I want to put a fringe on the stroke, which is the shape of my heart, if I want to fill it with fringe, or if I want rows of fringe. So if I click on the steel option and then my width here, I'm going to leave it at 0.4 because you want it wide enough so that you've got fringe on both sides. And I click OK. And you can see here that it automatically adds that satin stitch with the anchoring stitch in the center there. So now this heart, we would fringe on both the left and the right. If I do an undo and select and go back to the fringe shape, I can choose, say, fringe rows, and I can tell it what size rows I want. And then if I want them to be horizontal, diagonal, or vertical, and then click OK, and it fills that shape with those fringe rows. And you can see here, because of what we learned, I've got a satin column and I've got the anchoring stitch right at the top of my fringe layers here. So each one of these, I would cut the bobbin and it would give like a little fringe on each layer for this particular heart. So, and if I go back and I select the other options, so there's a fringe stroke, which is going to put it around the edge here. And I'm going to leave center and then this little bit of overlap. And when I click OK, it lets me choose from my fringe shapes. So you can choose any one that you want and click OK. And you can see that it puts it on the stroke or around the edge of our heart. Okay. And then one last one here, I'm going to do an undo. Again, go back into our fringe that we can apply to a shape. And let's do the fill option and then click OK. And then for this one, I'm going to fill it with the pom-pom here. And you can see that it fills in the entire shape. Now, if you want those to overlap a little bit more, I just did the undo. And then when you do the fill, you can make this number larger. So if I do a negative, it's going to put them closer together. A positive number is going to spread them further apart. So then it fills in our shape a little bit for more there. Okay. So those are two different ways to do fringe. And then for the 3D foam, you have to have a satin column on the screen. So either a steel stitch or a satin stitch to be able to apply that foam to. And then we're going to see a little bit more on that when we come back from our break. So, but I think that's a great point to take a break. Let's answer any questions that you guys might have. And then when we go back over, I'm going to show you how to create a couple of designs. And then I'll show you how to manually do some of those techniques in case you don't have the special effects software. So, and then I'm going to just scroll down here. So I'm just looking for questions that we might have. So let me back up here. And then Laura says, can you resize the design? So with fringe, Laura, that is actually an exceptional question. So with fringe, a lot of times, well, in our software, first of all, the fringe designs are created, a lot of them at the max stitch width of the popular brands of embroidery machine. So if you resize the fringe, then it's going to be too long of a stitch for your embroidery machine to actually stitch. Okay. So the built-in designs, I don't recommend resizing those larger so that those stitches get longer, but are wider. I will tell you that there are a couple of elements that you can resize the length, and I'll actually show you that when we go back. So that's actually a great question on the resizing, but just remember your machine will only stitch a certain max of width of your stitch. And if you go wider than that, it physically can't do it. And most of the machines will just skip those stitches and you'll have an opening or a hole in your design. And that could be why. So, and I'll show you a little bit more about that as well. So, and then Catherine says, when placing a fringe, I have noticed the blue handle line when directional placement. Yes. So when you select the fringe element, if you just click and don't release, you can drag and then you can rotate it around. I'll show you that whenever I go back over there too. That's a really good question, Catherine, as well. So I'll show you how to use that feature. And then Carolyn says, how do you compare features of FS and in the hoop? Features not in the compare program. Yes, so that's one of my duties. I was actually working on that a little bit today, was gathering the list of features that are in the hoop. And so that was, I completely forgot that we needed to update that with all of the merger of the two companies. So you'll see features on that coming up soon. Now, so the difference, Carolyn, I think what you mean is the FX, the special effects software in the hoop. So each of Dime's modules, they are have specialty, like I think of them as like one click, easy way to do whatever the topic of the software is. So for instance, with the special FX software, in just one click you can create special FX with your design. So like the fringe, the foam, plaid, embossing, mylar, things like that. So just with the click. If you have a program that you can digitize your own stitches, you can manually create anything that's pretty much in our modules, but the majority of us don't really love to digitize. We really just like to get to the stitching part. So Dime has really focused on making all of these things that everybody wants to do, but we don't want to learn to digitize, really easy with just a click. So we just try to make it as simple as possible, but just by adding a one-click kind of option. So the same is true for In the Hoop software. So In the Hoop software is designed for a one-click way to create In the Hoop projects. So it has a built-in wizard. You click the wizard, you answer the questions about what project you're creating, what size you want it to be, what text and what design you want on there. And then when you click OK, your design is done. So these two programs are, you can't compare really the specialty features because it's like apples and oranges. Now, both of them are going to have like your alignment tools. Both of them are going to have your artwork tool. Both of them are going to be able to open and save to all design formats. But the specialty features that these programs are known for are different. And that is true with all Dime programs. So hopefully that helps, Carolyn, because I know it's can get confusing. So, and then Laura, the resize the fringe, I'll definitely show that, Laura. So I'll get to that when we go back over there. That's a really great question, and it's very important to understand too. So, and then Dalu says, can you fill the heart with stripes like the flag? Yes, you can. So the heart, whenever I did the rose, that fills that with the stripes, and I'll show you how to change colors so that it looks like multicolored design. So that's really easy to do too. So. Okay, and when you're saying fringe, that means after stitch out, you're cutting threads on the back, then you're flipping and fluffing. Yes, exactly. So do you use two different thread colors in your machine? So Cindy, great question, and you're exactly right. When I say fringe, it's a particular design. You trim either the bobbin thread, or you can also cut the colored thread, your top thread, and join Eileen. She's going to talk about those two different ways of cutting. And then, yes, you flip it back, and then you flop it up where you pull your stitches basically to the front to create the fringe. If you want to use two different thread colors, so the design is what determines that. And so when I go back over, I'll talk about that as well. Another great question. So you guys really have some of the best questions. So, and the program I'm using, Leslie, is Special FX, but I'm also going to show you how to manually do some things too, if you have another program that you want to work with. So, and hey, Irene, good to see you here. And she said, is the software within Perfect Embroidery Pro? And so no, the Special FX is a specialty module that you purchase separate to give you the one-click option of creating these specialty techniques. But if you want to create some of these with your Perfect Embroidery Pro software, you would need to manually create a satin stitch or a steel stitch, add your anchoring stitch, and then I'm going to show you that as well. So other great questions. Okay, so I think I've got all the questions covered. Hopefully I remember them all. And so if I don't remember, so the stripes on the flag, so I'm going to show that for Dalu. And then Laura wanted to know about the resize. So let's head back over and answer some of those questions, and then we'll create some manual fringe as well. So, okay, so back over in our software. So about the resizing, the fringe. So if I choose one of the fringe elements here, and I select, I'm going to select, say, this pom-pom here is a really good example. And then just click to put, actually, you know what? I'm going to answer two questions at once. I'm going to answer Catherine and Laura. Okay, so let's go back and choose a different one. So Catherine wanted to know about the the directional placement. So, and then I'll talk about the two colors right here as well. So I'm going to choose, say this one that is the fan full, and it's two colors, and it is also fringe, and I can do directional. Now, when you click one time, just click and release, it's going to drop that fringe wherever you click. If you click and hold, you can spin your cursor around and you can see how I can rotate the fringe before I ever even release it. So for instance, when I was putting that fringe on the end of our flower here, I could have clicked and hold and drag to put that right into place, whereas I just rotated it after I positioned it. So click, hold, and drag, and then I'll let you rotate it before you ever even release it. Okay, so click, hold, and drag. Click, hold, and drag, or if you just click, it's going to be in the same direction. Now, this particular design here is a two-color fringe. So it is digitized with two different colors. So if we go over here and ungroup one of these, we can see that we've got a purple element and then the yellow element. So you would change colors there. Now, if your fringe is only digitized for one color, then if you want multiple colors, then I would say you could use the in the software. Let's choose, whoops, wrong button. Let's go back and go to the fringe tool and choose a solid color one. I'll do this pom-pom again. And click on the screen. So this is a one color fringe. So if you only have one color digitized and you want it to be more than one color, there's a couple of different things that you could do. You could use a variegated thread. So if I click on my thread option here, we have several different brands of different companies' variegated thread. Our own brand is the Exquisite Medley. And if I click one of the variegated options and click OK, that's what it would look like if I were to stitch that in a variegated thread. Okay. If you don't have a variegated thread, let's switch back to a solid color. Inside Special FX, there's a feature called Prism, and Prism is a feature that will take a single color design and allow you to apply color stops just by choosing these different colorways. And then you can adjust your slider bar here to change those colors. Okay. So the prism feature is will take any design and allow you to add multiple colors to it. We have all these built-in colorways that you can see here. But then the ones at the top, I've actually built my own colorways and I just put my initials in front of it so that I know those are ones that I created. Now, if I do this one little pom-pom, there is going to be a stop and a thread change for every one of these colors in this one little design. Now, me personally, let me go back and put that back on there so you can see it. That's a lot of thread changes, but you know how sometimes your heart wants what the heart wants, right? And so if that's your heart's desire, then certainly you can do it. And that would be separate colors here. So if we watch this stitch out, the first one, the little fan, gives us the purple and then the yellow for a two-colored fringe. And then this one, you can see it's going to give me the colors every so often. And then I'm going to have to put in a new thread for each one of those. Well, in this one too, but that is what, 4 or 5 different thread colors for that. And then all the way to the center. So if you want multicolored fringe or any design, the prism would work, or choose one of those elements that is multicolored. Okay. So now Laura asked about resizing fringe. Now this is a great example of resizing here. I'm going to do undo and just put this back to a solid color so that we can see it. So right now, if I use my ruler tool over here on the left, I can measure the width of this satin stitch. If I just click and drag my ruler tool, I'm going to switch to metric, because when I think of stitch width and length, I think of metric. So I just do a right mouse click on my ruler bar and I can switch between inches and metric. So I'm going to go to metric, and then with my ruler, click, hold, and drag to the opposite side here. And that is almost an 8mm stitch. Okay, so 8mm. The majority of our embroidery machines will do 8, but some will do a 9mm stitch. And so if we make this larger, so if I click and hold this and drag this larger, and now let's measure this stitch here. So if I do the ruler tool, click, hold, and drag, and it says that is a 10.5 millimeter stitch. So my embroidery machine won't stitch the 10 millimeters. And so it would basically, when it got to my machine, it would just be an empty hole. The machine doesn't know what to do with it because it can't jump uh, 10 millimeters wide. So on Fringe, it's best not to resize it unless you are familiar with what your machine capabilities are and you know how to check to make sure it's not too large of a stitch width. Okay. But now here's an exception. So just to make things a little bit more confusing and to complicate everything. So in these fringe elements, you have these straight fringe here. So you've got the small, medium, and then there's an extra large one in the length. I'm just going to go with the medium one and put it on the workspace here. I'm going to undo and just make it be straight. Okay. So now, because your software does recalculate the stitches when you resize, we don't want to resize this where the stitches get wider because that's going to give us a stitch width that our machine might not be able to stitch. But if I do undo, you can actually take this particular piece of fringe and just stretch it so that you get a longer piece of fringe, because all it's doing is filling in those stitches, but my stitch width of my satin stitch here has not gotten any wider. Okay, so let's watch that again. So if I click and drag, it gets longer, but the width is not getting wider, and my anchoring stitch is right there at the top. Okay. So just a little tip on resizing the fringe. So I think that we covered the two colors, the resizing of the fringe, and then filling the heart with the stripes and do different colors. Let's do that because that also leads me to this example. And you guys are going to see Eileen use that as well. Okay, so I'm going to fill with rose and we're going to change colors here. But what I did was I used a true type font. Okay, so remember this tool right here, the fringe shape, that can be applied to a shape, an artwork shape. So we first need an artwork shape before we used our heart. This time I'm going to use text. Okay, so this is your true type text tool. When you choose that and you click on the workspace and enter in your text over here to the right. And then from my drop down list here, I can choose all different kinds of built-in or not, well, they're built into my computer, true type font list. Okay. And I just went with something Arial because when you're filling your design, if you have like a really whimsical shape to your text, it doesn't fill as well with these rows because they're just straight rows. Okay, so here's my USA and I just chose Arial Black. Most people have that in their true type. Now my true type list may look different than yours because you can download and install true type fonts, and a lot of them you can do for free if they're just for personal use. Okay, so now this text is I'm going to go back to inches. So I'm going to click on one time on my ruler bar back to inches. This text is only about an inch tall, and I want these letters to be able to fill it with the fringe. You need a little bit of space. So if I make my letters, like I would say at least like 2.5 or 3 inches tall. So let's do 2.25 to be somewhere in between there, so that there's enough space for them to fill in here. Okay. Now, if I click the fringe shape option, and I choose the rows, that means I want to fill it with rows of fringe. And then you can choose the height of your stitch. So this is in inches. A lot of times I'll flip over to millimeters because I think of stitches really in millimeters a lot of times, but I'll leave that as is. And then you can choose horizontal or vertical, either direction, or diagonal, either direction, and vertical. So I'm going to click OK. And when I do, it fills that with those rows of fringe. Okay. And so each one of these I can actually select if I want and make it a different color. So I just click and drag and then do a right mouse click on my color here. Oh, and I accidentally grabbed the one below it. So let's do red here. And then for this, we can click the run stitch or the anchoring stitch and the satin stitch, and then I'm going to do a right mouse click on my white, leave that one blue, click on the fringe, hold down your control key, and you can select the other parts. And then I can right mouse click on a different color. Okay, so that's how you can make different fringe colors, is just by selecting and applying different colors this way in the rows as well. So that's just another way that we can do stuff. So red, we want that one to blue, so this one would be red. Okay, now I'm going to do an undo here. And let's go back to just the artwork of the letters, because I want to point out something else. Notice here our S, it does have just this little bitty piece here that filled in. You can actually just select that and delete it, because it still to me looks like a S without that little piece there. So that's what I would do. You can also adjust the width of your stitch to put more rows as well, to make it a little more full. But another thing you can do is change the direction. So I'm going to keep doing undo. And for this instance, instead of just clicking the tool, I'm going to break up the text. So right mouse click, break up text. And now I can select individual letters. So I hold down my control key and I clicked on the U and the A. And then fringe shape, and then I'm going to do the rows. For this one, let's do a 0.3, and you'll see we'll get more rows in there. And then click OK. And so now I've got the rows that are horizontal. And for the S, I'm going to do the same thing, and then click rows, and then let's do 45 for this one, and click OK. And then you get a different shape there. And the same thing here. This is part of the letter, but to me, it's such a tiny little piece of fringe that I probably would just delete it, because my letter still looks like an S. Okay. And for this, again, I just went in and selected and changed every other row a different color, so that I would get something that I could do for red, white, and blue. So that's pretty cool, right? And you'll see Eileen stitch show this and how to trim it and these different types of fringe on Thursday. So make sure you join her. Okay, so now that we're here, let's create this little piece of fringe here before we do the flag. And I'll show you how to do the stripes and the flag as well. And so to create this manually, okay, so if you do not have a special FX software, so I'm going to go over and I'm going to switch to my embroidery tool shed as my default here, so that I can get to more of my tools. Now, if you're new to our software, you do not have to switch back and forth between modules. And look at that, I need to download my supplemental material. We'll say no for now. and so you don't have to switch back and forth like I just did. I only did that just because it was easier to show you those icons on the toolbar. But if you're using several of Dime software together, you can leave the embroidery tool shed as the default. And then these icons that are to the far right where my cursor's blinking over here, those are the features. So let's say if I click on the SFX option, then you can see I've got the prism ombre, the fringe tool, the fringe shape, the plaid. So there's all those features. I could access them from this icon over to the right as well. Okay. So now let's create a stitch here for seeing what you would do to create fringe and what you would need to do to create a foam stitch as well. Okay. So now I'm going to draw a shape. So I'm going to just do a rectangle here. And the rectangle, I'm going to turn that into a satin stitch. So if I do a right mouse click, I can do convert to satin, and it makes that a satin column stitch there. Or if I do an undo, if you have Perfect Embroidery Pro, your different types of stitches are over here in the bottom right. So if I click the satin stitch, you can see that I can convert that to a satin. Let's change the color here. And then I also need to work on those little end pieces there, which we'll talk about. Okay, so for the fringe that we're seeing right here, you need an anchoring stitch. So for this, let's first choose our shape tool, and then I'm going to remove this split, delete split here, and delete split. And you don't have to do that necessarily, depending on, I'm just creating this from scratch. So if your line looks something like that, you may have to adjust it. And then I just moved my angle lines because I just wanted a solid column stitch here. Okay. Another way to create this is with the steel tool. So the steel option, if I draw just a straight line and select that, I can convert that to a steel. The other one, let me do the satin stitch. I had a rectangle, and if I had done the steel, it would go all the way around the edges. But here's my steel option over in my effects panel. And so now I've got that satin stitch. And if I stretch this wider, whoops, sorry, it is resizing the design. But if I want the stitch wider, like we've got here, that is over in my properties area. Right now it's a 3 mm. So if we do like a 7 or an 8 mm, you can see that it gets fatter here. Okay. So now for fringe, I usually turn off the underlay option because we are going to trim those stitches anyway. And so I turn off the underlay, and then I want to add an anchoring stitch. So what you could do is the same thing that I did here, just take the pen tool, and I'm going to click from one side to the other and then select that. And then I'm going to convert that to a steel stitch. But the width, I can make that much narrower. So like a 1.5 or a 2 mm. And then that's going to stitch right on top of our stitches. I'm going to do 2 different colors so you can see it. And let's zoom in. And that is really my anchoring stitch right there. Now, some people also use a run stitch for an anchoring stitch. You certainly can do that. I tend to have better luck with the narrow steel stitch. And I also leave the underlay underneath as well under this one, so that if I do the center line, I'm getting a run stitch and a steel stitch for that. And it just gives me a little bit more security. But if you want, that can be just a run stitch. I see that some designers do that as well. I just urge you, if you're creating your own designs, just to test. And then I can convert that to a run stitch. And maybe you want to shorten up that stitch length there too, and maybe make it a triple to really anchor that down. So that's an option too, if you want to create fringe and just use a run stitch for an anchor. But like I said, make sure you test it whenever you're doing this. If you're new to creating designs, testing is something that you're going to do more than anything else. Okay. Now, this same type of design, the satin stitch design, is also what we need for three-dimensional foam. Okay, so three-dimensional foam, you need a increased density, meaning that you want it to put your stitches closer together. So I usually drop it down to a 0.15 or maybe even a 0.17. Okay, and so now my stitches are much closer together to cover my foam. And then I have seen this both ways. I've seen, some designers do just like an open zigzag, or either no underlay or just the center line, because you don't want to compress your foam. So center line underlay is just going to tack that down, but still leave the loft of your foam. But you're going to need those caps at the end there. So if I zoom into just this one element here, and if we put this on 3D, or take off the 3D here, we need those end caps that are going to stitch before our satin stitch of our design. So I'm going to zoom this in here. And to create those, you're just going to create a shape and convert it to your satin stitch. Okay, so for these end caps, you can easily do like a rectangle here that would cap that off. And then I usually try to make my end caps more of a trapezoid, so that the ends get don't start to poke out. So I can use my shape tool here. If you've got Perfect Embroidery Pro, shape tool will allow you to adjust your points. So I can just click and drag. Okay, and then now I can convert that to a satin stitch. So either right mouse click, convert to a satin. You may have your satin stitch on the toolbar, or you may have your properties or your effects panel over here. But now this stitch here, you want to make sure that it stitches first. So it needs to stitch before my orange of the satin stitch. If we turn our 3D back on, and I'm going to do our slow redraw, and I'm going to skip ahead quickly to the orange, you can see how our blue anchor stitch stitches first, and then our satin stitch. So with foam, you need increased density, you need these end caps, and you need to uh, watch that underlay. Don't have a lot of underlay to compress your foam. Okay. Now the nice thing about the dime software, so I'm just going to go back to this one and remove that anchoring stitch. So if we watch this stitch out, let me zoom in over here, and then we'll do our question. So I'm going to zoom in, and you can see that if I turn off my 3D, I don't have those end caps there. So our friend or our tool in the Special FX software. So if I go over here to my Special FX icon and I click 3D foam, then it applies the right density, but oh, I see it did not do my end caps for some reason. So let me go and try a different, let me go see a different design. So let me grab a design here, and let's just look for, now I'm just looking for a kind of a design that would do what I'm trying to show you to do. So let's see here. Maybe those leaves would work if I made one bigger. So let's look at these leaves that we saw earlier. So these satin stitches here. So if I ungroup and if I resize this larger, I'm not worried about my underlay and stuff here. But this, when you resize too wide, you can see that that has changed the stitching. So you don't want to go that wide. Okay, so you want full satin stitches. And then if I click my 3D foam, losing my brain here. And then now let's look at that on 3D. It should have added the cap. So, or it's going to, oh, nope, it's making me, nope. Okay, I'm gonna stop and I need to look into that. So because it should be adding the caps, but these do taper, so you don't really need the caps, but you do need the caps under the steel stitch that I did over here. So not sure why it didn't add that. So I need to look into that. So let's select this one. We're gonna try it one more time. This is what I do at home is I try. And if I don't get it, then I stop. Nope, it didn't do it. So I need to look into that. But it is supposed to add those end caps under there. So I'll have to check into that and get back to you guys on that. Okay, so that USA with the fill on the fringe. And then these are the two methods that you would create a foam design and a fringe design from scratch if you have Perfect Embroidery Pro. Okay, so let's see if we have any questions, and then I'll do the flag option really quickly, and then we can talk about what's coming up. So, okay, so Joy Stevens says, what's the name of the Thursday class, and is there a place to sign up? Remember emails. So it's actually our Facebook Live on Thursday, Joy. So if you go to, and actually Catherine already put it, so thank you, Catherine. She put the link to our YouTube channel. So go to our YouTube channel or Facebook page for Dime by OESD, and it will air live on both Facebook and YouTube. And if you go and subscribe and like, you'll get notifications when we go live. So that is a great question. So, okay. And then Catherine says, can multiple or several fringe be color sorted? Yes, you sure can. Just use your color sort feature to do that. And then Cindy says, if you have a design that had 4 pom-poms with the prism function, would you be able to stitch one color for all of them? So probably not on the fringe. You wouldn't be able to, so that sounds to me, Cindy, like you're talking about color sort as well, but I don't think that that's a good idea because of that center anchoring stitch that needs to be stitched last. Now, if you separated that out manually and just stitch that last, you probably could do the color sort on 2 fringe with those multiple colors. So it would stitch the yellow over here, tie off, stitch the yellow over here, and then tie off, and then just make sure your anchoring stitch is the last thing that stitch. That's the most important thing about that as well. So I was just looking back here to see other questions. I think I got all of those. Let's see here, just looking through. Okay, and then Kathy says, how small is feasible? So I want to make fringe earrings and think of the tree and the fan. Yes. So I would say to get a nice like fringe, like to me at least and this is personal preference. You can do whatever you like, but I would say like a 3 millimeter or 4 millimeter for the width. Otherwise, there's not much thread to fringe. So if you go smaller than like a 3 millimeter width on the stitch, you're not going to have much to fringe. So, but that's a really great question. But again, what I say, that is not the gospel, Kathy. Test it and see if you like that amount of fringe. You may want less or more, but just if you get too narrow, there's really not any thread to fringe. So, okay, so we're almost out of time here. Let me go over and show you the flag that I created, because I also want to show applying the foam to lettering, because this is a question we get often. So let's go over and create the little flag example that I did. And I'm going to be using the built-in fringe tool, and then I use this medium fringe here. And then, whoops, I want it to be straight. Okay. And so then I just clicked this, and then I just made it as wide as I wanted. And if you copy and paste this, or either use the repeat tool, you can actually make a lot of repeats quickly. Okay. So I just made, I think I made 5, because I did 2 long rows and 2 short rows. Okay. And then you can put a certain amount of distance in this if you want. It's entirely up to you. And then click apply, and then okay. And then all of this was red because I let the fabric make the white of the design. And then these two here on the bottom, I stretched wider. Remember we said that you can stretch them wider. You just don't want to, or longer. You just don't want to go wider. Not that long. So let's go a little shorter here. And then for the star here, you can use, if you have a star already built in somewhere, you can bring it in, or, well, not a heart. You could also draw a heart if you wanted, but I was going to draw the star shape here. And then you can convert that to fill stitches, whatever you want. From the SFX, you could make that fringe as well if you wanted to, or maybe you could make it plaid. Would be a great idea. So I'm just going to reduce this so it's closer together. So let's do like a 4-3 to give us more plaid. And then we're going to make that yellow or gold for our star. Okay. And then for the text. Okay. So here's a tip on creating foam text. Okay. So in Special FX software, there are built-in foam fonts, but you can also use your built-in embroidery fonts if you own some in our software, or you can use TrueType fonts. So I'm going to use TrueType fonts. So let me choose my text tool here. And then I'm going to put, I just put remember, since it is upcoming Memorial Day, and then click apply. And so I'm going to switch to my TrueType and to the satin option for TrueType. And then I used a cursive font. This is a font that I love using for foam, and it's one that I downloaded for free. Now here, make sure that your text is bold enough for that foam satin stitch as well. So the other reason I like this for foam is, remember we talked about those tapers. So my text is all completely enclosed. So I'm going to make this text maybe like 1 1/4 in size, so that I got some really good surface area for my 3D foam. And now notice here, I'm actually going to go over here to my Special FX. Notice here that my 3D foam in my list is not active. I cannot click it because this is a text object. Okay. So what you want to do is right mouse click, break up text. Now this is all seen as just satin objects. So now under my Special FX, my foam is available. So when I click the 3D foam, it then sets my density and does what it needs to make my 3D foam font option. Okay. So that's a way that you can use true type fonts to turn them into a foam font. But also if you do have special FX, it does have built-in foam fonts as well. So we get that question on those true type fonts quite often. So, okay. So now before we go, we are all out of time here. So the Fringe tool and the auto foam and the Fringe shape, those all are from the SFX software, the special FX. But I use the satin tool and the steel stitch tool to create those manual versions of the Fringe and the foam. So those are, satin is only part of PEP. The steel stitch you can create in PEP, My Quilt Embellisher, My Lace Maker, or Passion Applique Maker, and the Special FX software. So if you don't have Special FX and you want to manually create satin stitches or steel stitches, satin stitches are only in PEP, but you can use those other programs to create steel stitches to create your own fringe as well. So, and then Linda said the name of that font is Chocolate. Yes. So it's a free font that I downloaded from the internet. It's only for personal use. So if you go to your favorite font place that you download true type fonts, you can search and check there. And I do have a lesson in the past, Linda, on how to download those true type fonts as well. So you can look back in our past software success for that if you want. So, all right. So, all right. I don't see any other questions. So I just want to start by saying in 2 weeks, I won't see you here because we will be doing a really fun educator retreat in Oklahoma City. So I won't be with you for software success on May the 20th. So the first episode in June is June the 3rd. So join me in June the 3rd, on June the 3rd, and I'm going to be talking about the new In the Hoop Designer software. I was kind of waiting a bit so that more people had it and wanted to join and learn more about it. But I'll talk about getting started with your In the Hoop Designer software on June the 3rd. And so if you've got questions about that program or just want to see what it's about, make sure that you join me then. So don't forget to check out Eileen this Thursday for the more information on stitching fringe and cutting it and getting those different types of edges. And then I'll see you back here June the 3rd for your next software success. So, and as always, if you don't own one of the programs that I was talking about, but you are interested in it, check with your local dealer. We always like to support your favorite brick and mortar. So go to them, ask if they have Dime software, and purchase from them. And you can also purchase from our site if you want. That's up to you. But definitely support your local or your favorite brick and mortar dealer. You can always try any of these features that I was also showing today by doing the trial version, as I mentioned in the beginning of this episode. So you can rewind after we're done airing live and watch how to try any of our Dime software modules. So, all right, guys, until we have another software success, I'll say bye for now and thank you all for being here.